Ascension is something that I believe is going to be happening very soon. The implications of the knowledge that I'm going to share with you today extend to the fullness of human history, not only on Earth, but throughout the entire cosmos. I did have a slideshow in mind, and we've been having ongoing issues with laptops overheating, and slides are not actually functional. So I'm going to walk you through some of the things that were in that show and paint some pictures for you. Imagine you have the ability to levitate your own body. Imagine you have the ability to manifest food as much as you want out of thin air, to create thoughts in people's minds, to make them feel loved and nurtured and supported, and get this sort of samadhi bliss hit. Imagine that you can fly through the air and have the ability to read other people's minds to such an extent that telepathy is just as easy and normal as breathing. Imagine that you don't have to worry about getting sick, that you're much less concerned with negative emotions. They don't ever affect you like they do here. My philosophical body of teaching that I draw off of, the Law of One material, says that in life in fourth density is 100 times more harmonious than what life is like now in this plane of existence. 100 times, not 100%. So it's really quite difficult to fathom the scope and the magnitude of the change that will occur for you when you go through this profound evolution. You might feel unworthy of such a change. You might feel that you haven't earned it, or you don't deserve to be something like this. You don't deserve to become an ascended being. But I ask you a simple question. And since I'm channeling this, I have no fucking idea what the question is going to be yet. Where are you originating from? Where is your origin? What is your identity? Identity is the question that we must answer in order to understand ascension. Identity of the consciousness that appears to be sitting in that chair and appears to be down there in the audience, whereas I'm up here on this stage. That identity that has as its focal point the physical body, and the comforts and needs of the body, of course, are one of the things that are going to be going through your mind as you experience each and every day. So what do you do with this? What do you do with this concept of identity? How do you reconcile this ultimate question? Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Those are technically three questions. I got to talk to the source a little bit about the phraseology of some of this stuff they're giving me to say to you. Take a look at what you have achieved and understand that there are a lot of people out there in energetic forms who are highly, highly focused on you. Whole committees of people analyzing each and every nuance, second by second, of the flow of your thoughts. And because they experience time in a different continuum than you do, they have the ability to be present for those thought forms and to study how best to send you telepathic assistance that will aid in the unfolding of your own higher consciousness. There is some part of you inside that knows the truth. There is some part of you that is completely aware of your identity. And that's the part of you that you are in contact with when you feel inspired. It's the part of you that surges with joy. When you see a beautiful natural scene and you stand on a mountaintop and inhale the crisp green air. You're looking at snowy mountaintops and gorgeous plateaus. That inspiration often seems too fleeting. It's like a silk scarf that you tried to catch as it's going by in the wind, but it slips through your fingers. It's elusive. It would be nice if we could capture this at all times. And then sometimes there are certain people or certain behaviors that enable us to feel this sense of inspiration. And it's all too easy for us to become identified with those people or with those behaviors as the source of the inspiration. To take that identification of consciousness and to center it in the body. To say that this behavior makes my body feel good, or this person makes my body feel good. And therefore, this behavior or this person is my goal. Well, that's a trap. We do have a level that is predominantly focused on the body. But the concerns of the body are also the body's job. You have to take care of your body. It's your temple. There's another level of consciousness that you reach when you are in a state of inspiration. And I want to talk to you about that level of consciousness because there are surviving teachings here on earth that have successfully produced ascension 160,000 times, documented. And this comes out of Tibet, India, and China. Now, I could go into a long dissertation on the nature of how these teachings came about. There was a man who had 6 fingers named Padmasambhava. He could levitate. The word Padmasambhava means lotus born. They claim that he came out of an egg from the sky. He had no parents. He landed here. And he gave us these ascension teachings. And when you look at pictures of him, it seems as if he basically was putting makeup on to make eyebrows. He didn't have any eyebrows, and he didn't have any hair. So this definitely appears to be an extraterrestrial who had already achieved this level of realization and brought it to us. So what did this extraterrestrial friend of ours have to say about the nature of consciousness? If you desire ascension, and that's a choice that you're going to make. It is a choice. It is not a guarantee. If you desire to graduate from the mill of suffering, from repetition of the same experiences again and again and again, learning through bad karma, all these kinds of things, then ultimately what you really want to do is to understand that you have a level of your consciousness that is what Padmasambhava called empty awareness. Nothing more important than that concept. Empty awareness. So Padmasambhava would instruct his disciples to look out at the sky, for example, and look at the vastest expanse of open space that you can see in wherever area you are at the moment. Then you take that consciousness that you are experiencing as your identity, as your selfhood, and you project it into that space. You imagine that you are soaring into that space, that you are expanding, and you are becoming that space. You are becoming that glorious vastness. And then, from there, you try to further enhance that sense of expansion so that you become the entire visible space of everything. At that point, the key is to see that all of that emptiness is awareness. And when you meditate deeply enough, so he taught us, and this is now 800 AD, you understand that the awareness is all that exists. The consciousness is the builder of the space. The consciousness is the form maker of the form that you are perceiving. Once you get to that point, you then understand that you are the builder of the space. You are the origin of the identity that has made the universe. It is you. You are that consciousness. That is the law of one. That is the core of the process of enlightenment. And so, without getting into a whole lot more technical detail about all the little intricacies of this stuff, once you recognize your cosmic identity, we then have an opportunity to be in the world, to be part of this hologram, and to see where there are deficiencies and to help to correct them. Maybe correct isn't even the right word, to alter them in a way that is more beneficial. Without that perspective, without that knowledge that you are still here, that you could be that cosmic awareness and you could be present here at the same time, without that, you are living in a delusion. And the things that the body wants are not ultimately going to be in alignment with that cosmic awareness. One of the most important teachings from these Tibetans as well is this concept of cut the cords. And I want to bring that to your attention. You have these guys meditating in caves, and the idea is that if you can spend only 13 years where no other thought in your mind is a thought but a loving thought, the only thoughts you have for 13 years are loving thoughts, then you activate your rainbow body. Now, that's not the kind of ascension that I'm talking about as heading our way now. That is the full-on Olympic athlete. I'm going to make it all the way to the farthest edge of what the universe wants me to know. That's the full graduation, full total spiritual liberation. It's extremely rare, but it did happen 160,000 documented times in our own recent history. And there is a case at which there were representatives from the Chinese military and government and a man who came over from the Institute of Noetic Sciences, Father Francis Tissot, who went to Tibet and actually witnessed a light body activation, a rainbow body transfiguration of a person who lost consciousness, his body slumped over as if it was dead, and then they wrapped him up in these very colorful sarongs, and inside the sarongs his body shrinks down in size to a little figurine that's about 5 inches tall that's just ash over the course of 7 days. And what they do is really true. They dress up these little guys with clothing, and then they make a religious altar out of it. And that's an homage to the ascension that these people went through. Then there are other cases, and this is more rare, where they have a spontaneous rainbow activation, and their body just turns into light. That's what happened to Padmasambhava, and 25 of his disciples did this in front of a group of people. They just turned into light, just like that. So what is this thing about cutting the cords? Bear in mind that if you are a spiritual person, everyone around you is going to want to, they're going to feel something from you. They're going to feel some kind of greater enlightenment from you. They're going to feel a sense of belonging, and they're going to want to be a part of that. And a lot of people's intentions can be really misconstrued in terms of how they approach you and what they want out of you and what their goal is. And the sad truth is that a lot of people's goals can be really, really very distorted from the perspective of the cosmic identity that they ultimately possess. Their body consciousness, their bodily mind has kind of taken over, and a lot of people call that the ego. Do you want to talk a little bit, Corey, about the vision of humanity that you got in the library? That might be a good point for that. that when you got to see the group mind of humanity and the consciousness? Not right now. He said it was pretty upsetting. When Corey was taken into the inner earth and he went to the library, he was given a vision of the actual mass consciousness of humanity, the actual state that we live in, the state that people are dwelling in most of the time. And it was extremely upsetting. My new book, The Ascension Mysteries, the whole first half of the book is about my experience of being a child and having all these cosmic things happening to me and having beings talking to me in my dreams and synchronicity and psychic ability and all this kind of stuff going on routinely. And then just being ever more consistently disappointed by what I was experiencing. To the point where by the time I'm 15 years old, I started to use marijuana. And by the time I was 16 years old, I also took psychedelics. And I quit all that stuff when I was 19. But during that time, I really felt like my life is hopeless. That there was no way I could turn it around. I had this deep primal fear that I had lost control of the story and that something else was in control of me. And I'm not saying that that's just smoking weed. The weed is a byproduct of something that was actually a sickness inside myself. So a lot of these ancient teachings are going to tell you that you really need to love yourself. Self-acceptance is the bullseye. You're going to hear a lot of esoteric teachings. I'm going to be back here 2 hours after I get off the stage again with a panel. We're going to be talking about the extraterrestrial agenda. We're going to get into ascension on that panel to some degree. And you can get into really lofty thought forms and archaic metaphysical concepts. But at the end of the day, what you have to have is an appreciation of yourself. Self-worth. I was told by my own contacts that some people will not ascend simply because they do not think they deserve it when they get the opportunity. I don't want that to happen to you. And I would encourage you to start cutting the cords, just like they were telling us in these ancient teachings 1,200 years ago. Cutting the cords of all the people who told you that you are not good enough. All the people who told you that you don't matter, that you don't have value, that you aren't appreciable. Anyone who thinks that you are other than absolutely perfect is existing in delusion. Anyone who sees you as unworthy has fallen for the illusion. They've gotten trapped in the gears of the machine. Part of the problem is you get high from repeating the traumas that happened to you before. Soldiers who have been in combat will oftentimes become mercenaries and put themselves in life or death situations involving killing as a profession. I have a whole study in my book by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who took a look at a huge number of different categories of people who, for example, were traumatized as children by their parents, and they then reenact the trauma, and they don't consciously realize what they're doing. So there are people that in the law of one terms are in a state they call true helplessness. What that means is that they are going around and they will run to the next situation that will repeat their trauma once again. As soon as they resolve one of them, they run to another one, compulsively. And I feel that I'm a recovered trauma addict myself, because here's the thing, it is an addiction, okay? The actual process of repeating your trauma creates a high equivalent to the injection of 8 milligrams of morphine. This was scientifically proven by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. How did that happen? Let's talk about that. He gets a group of soldiers together who acknowledge that they have PTSD from combat. And he puts them down and he shows them a movie that has extremely graphic war scenes that are sure to trigger anyone. And then what he does is he tests them for something called an analgesic response. If you've ever seen old aspirin, it says analgesic on it. That just means pain reliever. The analgesic response is also called the morphine response because what it does is it actually decreases the amount of pain receptivity on your skin and inside your body. It also creates a sense of euphoria. He was able to measure the analgesic response by doing things like sticking people with a needle gently, not terrible, enough that it would normally cause pain, and then asking people scientifically to rate their pain, to rank their level of pain receptivity. When these soldiers were watching those combat videos, they were doped up. All of the tests, the MRIs, the pinpricks, all that stuff showed that their brains were under the effect of a drug akin to morphine because you have natural opiates in your own body. They're called endorphins and enkephalins. So this is the challenge that we are faced with. We're faced with the challenge of how do we override this natural desire to want to get high off of throwing ourselves into miserable, impossible situations. And I want to really break through whatever conditioning you might have right now. If there's one thing I want you to take away right now, it's to please remember that when you are in a very painful situation, a situation that makes you feel like a victim, a situation that makes you feel unappreciated, you are doing drugs. You're a drug addict. And the drugs are your own opiates. Well, then how do you get past the addiction? How do you recover from something that doesn't even involve the actual taking of a substance? You can't just go to AA and say, yeah, I'm a recovering trauma addict. Well, we don't have anything like that right now. It's when you go back to your center, it's when you get to a place of presence that you then realize that you are not just that body that has been judged. So if you look at the image of yourself in the mirror and you are not feeling completely at peace with the way you look, just recognize that that is not your full identity. It is just a projection of yourself. And you have every right to be loved and supported. You deserve love. You deserve peace. You deserve tranquility. The beings that have been talking to Corey, that have been talking to me, they want you to be happy. They want you to be at peace. They don't want you to suffer. And if you learn who you really are, if you learn that this cosmic identity is you, then why in God's name would you not want other people to be happy? Because they are you. It would be akin to having one of your arms badly burned, second-degree burns and blisters, and you don't want to go and put ice on it. That's what happens when someone is crying or when someone is hurting and you don't do anything about it. And then if you actually cause those burns, you literally might as well be holding a lighter to your own arm and self-harming. Unfortunately, there's a real epidemic in people doing that kind of stuff these days. When I did the tape recording for my book, The Synchronicity Key, the studio I was working in, there was a guy that had put a lit lighter all over his arms. There was burn marks all over both of his arms, and it was kind of like, well, should I talk to him about this? You know, here we are taping, and I didn't actually say anything to him about it, but I just wanted him to know that I appreciated him, because I could see he was just in a very, very lonely place. So these questions of how do you get out of the trauma addiction really come to their full focus in this experience of relationship. How do you relate to others? How do you interact with others? So ascension is ultimately going to be a question of understanding that you are not just one person. One of the most enigmatic meditation points that was given to us in the Law of One is we cannot see you as separate beings. It's impossible. And I've had readings I've done in which they tried to explain that a person is sort of like a stone at the bottom of a pond. or in this case a stream, where the water is flowing over the stone. The stone is the body, but the water is the mind. What does that mean? The mind flows through you, but it is not you. We have this illusion that consciousness is actually a function of the brain. But yet we know, for example, that we have Cambridge University physician Dr. John Lorber, who studied people with a medical condition called hydroencephaly, or water on the brain, in which craniosacral fluid cannot adequately flow through the body, and it all backs up inside the skull, and then what you have is this massive fluid inside the skull. What does this do? In some cases, these people had brains that were literally compressed down to a slice of bologna in size along the interior of the skull, like if you've ever had a sweet young coconut. You got the coconut water and the coconut meats around the edge. It's exactly what the brain turned into. Now, if you actually measure that brain mass, it is very, 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 very significantly less than what it should be. There are some scientists that have had the ridiculous idea of trying to say, oh, well, all the matter is compressed. But no, they've actually measured the volume and the number of cells. They're not there. As you know, if you've read my books or maybe you've heard me talk enough times, one of these guys actually graduated from Cambridge University with a degree in mathematics. And he didn't have a brain, or very little of a brain. Then we have other experiments that show us the same thing. The brain, another example would be people who have seizures. And these parents have to make an absolutely heartbreaking decision where they're going to have to remove one of the hemispheres of their child's brain, or else the child's going to die. A lot of this stuff was done at Johns Hopkins University. If you don't get that hemisphere out of there, if you don't get that damaged material out of the brain, the kid's not going to make it. How the hell do you answer that question? Obviously, you spend a long time thinking about it before you say yes. In the vast majority of hemispherectomy operations, the seizures completely stop. There is no visible change whatsoever in the level of intelligence. In fact, in some cases, it goes up because they're not being burdened by a malfunctioning apparatus. What the heck is consciousness then? Once you look at something like Dr. John Lorber's research about the brain being compressed, the only conclusion you can reasonably make is that the actual process of consciousness that you are using to listen to me right now is not your brain. That awareness that you're experiencing right now, that pinpoint of consciousness, that light that is conscious, is not the stone at the bottom of the pond or the stream. It's the water. And if you look at all the people in this audience, imagine now that there are currents flowing through this audience. We know that that's true. And the greatest example of this, of course, as I've so often said, is the meditation effect. We actually have enough people here at this event to recreate the meditation effect. And the meditation effect is simply where you have a large number of people who get together and focus on thoughts of peace, tranquility, and happiness, a state that they refer to as pure consciousness. Seeing themselves as pure awareness, seeing themselves as limitless potential that is empty and aware. When those people had that shift in consciousness, there is some sort of field effect that changes everyone's behavior on Earth, their alleged free will behavior. You can allegedly, on your own free will, you can allegedly pick up a gun and decide to shoot someone and think that is strictly a personal choice. But we know that 72% of acts of terrorism that would normally occur by statistical probability and random metrics of just how these things unfold, 72% of those acts of terror do not occur. Whoever would have been angry enough, would have been in pain enough to want to pick up that gun and shoot that person, they simply decide not to do it. So here we are, in this illusion in which we feel that our behavior is the product of free will. But yet with data like that, we absolutely can tell that it is not. We are absolutely co-creating a reality that we all go through. One of the things that the Blue Avians have explained to Corey over and over again is that these consciousness shifts that we're going to go through, this ascension that we're going to go through, it's not like it has a fixed timeline. It has to do with how well we have followed up on our own dharma to try to bring about a change in consciousness. So yes, on one level, Gaia is recruiting, we're hiring, but we are recruiting on a much deeper level. There is a cosmic service at work here. There is a cosmic job that you can take on. In an Edgar Cayce reading in the 1940s, in the heat of World War II and the terrifying surge of the Blitzkrieg and Hitler and the Wehrmacht, and all of that stuff that has seemed as if there was nothing that could be done to stop people from being put into ovens. The Cayce readings told this group of 45 people meditating together that they had the power to stop that war right then with their own consciousness. They didn't understand, and they obviously didn't follow the practice that was given because it continued. All of these things that we seem to feel as if they're unbelievably beyond our control to do anything about. Well, what can I do? I'm just one person. I would strongly encourage you to really reflect on the scientific facts that I'm giving you in this talk, the science of ascension, and integrate that into your being and understand, for example, that there have been studies done by groups such as the Institute of Heart Math in which they will look at two different people who live in adjacent structures. Those people don't know each other, they're not interacting with each other. What they find is that there will be synergies that you can actually measure between them in their biological metrics, meaning the respiratory rate, the heart rate, the brainwave activity. The brain waves will start to synchronize between people in neighboring areas. That's been proven. Then what's even more interesting is that whoever has greater coherence carries the other person up to that level. And what do I mean by coherence? I mean, when you have focused, calm, non-distracted, peaceful thoughts, your brain waves reflect a clarity which is a nice sinusoidal type of waveform. It has regular repeating patterns. When you are in a state of anger or fear or distress or pain or sorrow or jealousy, nervousness, anxiety, your brain waves are very chaotic. And when I was on this panel yesterday and we were talking with Mike Barra about torsion fields, we talked about the work of Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev, a Russian physicist who actually did go through and make a meta-analysis of consciousness studies as well as doing his own. He kind of upgraded this science that was out there in Russia, very quiet science, and showed that in fact our thoughts have waves that they create that affect the reality around us. So this is what's happening right now. And another way to talk about it is there was Roger Nelson from Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, or PAIR. And they started to take computers that would generate random number sequences and then measure how random the numbers are. This is really strange stuff. They're generating random numbers, and they have these computers sitting all over the world. And what they find is that the computer's randomness goes down. It starts to create patterned behavior during mass consciousness events. So that's the theory. And what they have to do is wait for mass consciousness events to take place, which cannot be predicted in advance most of the time, like 9/11. And they show that these computers start to react to 9/11 in which they are now not creating random numbers, but they're creating patterns. And I had to meditate for probably 3 or 4 years on this before I figured out why this was happening. The actual electricity that is flowing through these wires, flowing out of my microphone, flowing out of these speakers, that electricity is not strictly going to work the same way all the time. There are capacitors and various components inside these electronics that allow for fluctuations in the electrical current to occur. As an example, current coming out of the wall can be anywhere between 102 to 110 volts, and it can vary. And your electronics will compensate for that. What's actually happening is that we are affecting the flow of the electrical energy. And in a very, very sensitive circuit like a computer chip, we start to create these coherent waves. It's like if you have ever done that trick where there's a tennis ball in the middle of your pool, and you don't want to jump into the pool, you want to get the tennis ball. All you got to do is start cupping the water and pulling it towards you in one place for a while. And the next thing you know, the ball will just come right towards you. Did you actually touch the ball? No. You created waves that had action at a distance. So when we hear, as you're listening to my thoughts, everyone is very relaxed. I've brought us into a very peaceful, exalted state of consciousness here. No one has walked away. You're all totally with me. We are creating those waves right now. The way this feels, what you feel right now, is the goal. That is the objective. And the more that we feel this, the more that this actually radiates out around us. I've used this analogy before. I want to use it again. There was a transcendental meditation group, and a lot of these studies were done with transcendental meditation on this so-called meditation effect. And they were meeting in Lebanon, and this was during a war. And they had this whole belief system about the idea of pure consciousness and about the idea that wars and fatalities are decreased when they're in a state of meditation. And they're in this amphitheater. It wasn't outdoors like this, it was indoors. And hostilities break out right near the building. They're hearing gunshots going off, they're hearing the boom of explosions, machine gun fire, people screaming, cars crashing and turning upside down, right outside the building. This is going to freak you out. And the people who were up on stage leading this meditation were actually very seriously questioning whether they should all try to evacuate. But if they did, it could have been a whole-scale slaughter. They could have just walked right out and been mowed down by machine guns. So what do? The person up on stage and the people in the audience finally decided the only thing we can do is to prove for ourselves that we actually believe this stuff. We know that this works. It's been scientifically proven 39 different times that violence and hostility can be decreased by meditation. So let's put this into practice right now. And don't have any fear in you at all. Only have thoughts of peace, happiness, vibrational upliftment, tranquility, joy, love. That's it. They all got quiet. Everybody's meditating. They're hearing the sounds of gunshots and machine guns. They're hearing the sounds of bombs and cars crashing and people screaming. And as they continued to meditate, sounds went down and down. And by the time the meditation had ended, it was utterly whisper quiet outside. All of those hostilities had completely ended. Whatever violence was occurring in that area, it had completely stopped. This is what these beings want us to know, folks. And when you have reached a level that you can maintain some sort of stability in your life where you're generating that peace and that love, now you are part of the Ascension Initiative. So, yes, the meditation technology is amazing, and mass meditations are amazing, but why would you want to go to church on Sunday and curse the Creator for the rest of the week? Why would you want to only be in this state of pure consciousness during this meditation? Oh, we're going to do this together. What I'm trying to explain to you now is that there is a different type of evaluation going on in the higher realms of people on Earth. And who do they think are the celebrities? Who do they think are the people who really are the front runners of this cosmic plan? If you want to be one of those Olympic athletes, the challenge is the ballet dance of joy and fear, of pleasure and pain, and learning to dance through those without it sticking to you. Having that dynamic contrast of experience in which you see all experiences as being a sacred manifestation, including those that for most people's perception would be the most upsetting, the most dire, the most terrifying. One of the really weird Tibetan teachings is they say that if you are on the run from a pack of wild dogs and you believe that they're about to tear you apart, you are very, very close to pure cosmic awareness in that moment. When you have a vigorous experience, even if it's a negative experience in the Tibetan tradition that was given to us by this six-fingered benevolent extraterrestrial, Padmasambhava, lotus-born, those negative experiences are your gift. That's your opportunity to take an existing situation and transform it into something beautiful. And the challenge that we face is the universe does not paint between the lines. The universe does not cut things into nice little squares that are all the same size and feed them to you at a speed that is comfortable. Sometimes it's feast, sometimes it's famine, sometimes you're getting overfed. Sometimes there's so many things that are happening to you that are upsetting and crazy all at the same time that you get overwhelmed and you have to just literally withdraw into your shell and be alone. And I'm not telling you there's anything wrong with that. The real goal here is to preserve your state of pristine consciousness. That's what ascension is really about. How to stay in that place where you are up on the mountain in terms of your energy and in terms of your feelings. How do you stay there when all these upsetting things happen? Another very important part of the ascension process is, yes, I could tumble out hundreds and hundreds of different ways to prove to your analytical mind that there is going to be some sort of consciousness change. But if you don't actually eat and digest that meal, then we're wasting food. To eat and digest the meal is to understand that you are a being that has been through many, many incarnations. You are not a first-timer. I don't think anybody here is a first-timer. I don't think anybody on Earth is a first-timer at this stage in our evolution. We're in an era of universal reincarnation. Everyone who has ever been alive on Earth at any point in history is here today. There's a body for everybody. Everybody who's ever been in the game, they're now here. That's important. That's one of the things we learned from the pyramid timeline, Great Pyramid. It has this timeline in its passages that has been mathematically analyzed by Peter Le Mesurier and other scholars. Universal reincarnation. So I want to be clear in telling you this. You are probably going through hell right now. I mean, not right now, because this is pretty freaking awesome. Okay? But just double click and let's kind of widen it by a week in each direction. Yeah, it sucks. Okay? I'm not telling you that it's not going to suck. But I'm telling you that you do have a lot more control than you may realize over the outcome. And that's awesome. That's awesome because that puts the power back in your hands. You have a choice. You have an option to not decide to experience negative emotions when negative things happen. One of the things the beings taught me for years, back in late 90s, early 2000s, when I was doing a lot of readings with them, is they said there is an interval, there is a time interval between an experience that you have and the patterned response that results. The habitual response that you have. Someone looks at you and, I just don't feel it. I'm not feeling you. I'm not feeling it. There's this hateful energy that they give you. Let's just say that happened. Project yourself into one of those and think about the idea that most of us are going to form a judgment. We're going to form a judgment about that person. We're going to feel unfairly wronged, and we will immediately go into a thought loop of pain in which we may or may not consciously be aware of these other times that this has happened, and in fact, maybe feelings of unworthiness. We're worried secretly that this person is actually right. They found out. They got the secret. We're not worthy. We're not good enough. But here's the deal. There's an interval between the moment that the stimulus happens and the moment that the patterned response begins. There's a gap. There's a little extra time. Now, in most people's cases, the pattern is so consistent that that gap is almost a fraction of a second. And what the beings encouraged me as one of the ascension teachings is, widen the gap. If you start to have something really overwhelming happen to you, and you have always basically had the same response, step back from it for 5 minutes before you decide to have that response. If you're at work or you're working at home and some really, really stressful situation comes into being, instead of immediately plunging into the automated mode, the robotic fear that you would normally experience, take the time to step back and become the observer of yourself. This person that I am, this body that I normally identify with, has just been told that it's losing its money, it's losing its home, it's losing its security, it's losing its love. And I'm actually telling you the truth because this happened yesterday. I was in the car with my friends, including Corey. That didn't come out right. Got to watch out about this trance state stuff, man, I'll tell you. And I get sent a picture from my house. Gigantic smoke clouds. A wildfire coming right up the hill towards my house. You remember this? I mean, you were right there, dude. This is an example of putting that teaching in action. Yeah. He said, I was sitting right next to your friends. Wow, I really stepped in it on that one. Man. See, I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to claim to be. Now, my reaction was probably a little non-standard because instead of like crying or screaming or going, oh my God, or anything like that, I waited until the other conversation stopped and I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you were just saying because something has just happened and I need to process it. The photo that I was sent made it appear that the fire was basically coming right up the hill and that the people who helped me, who are in my house, would have, 10 or 15 minutes to evacuate with their lives and get the dogs out and not have everybody be burning alive. This literally happened yesterday. Go look it up. Topanga Canyon fire. It did happen. And instead, we didn't even talk about it, but I just put the practice into action, which was that I followed these principles. I stayed relaxed. I didn't panic. And one of the things that you learn, and the reason why Corey and I are alive, the reason why we're up here and we haven't been taken out, why there isn't something that blocked us from being able to do this, is that if you are in that pure consciousness, if you are working to try to assist humanity, then you are what they call, and this is now in the Cabal or so-called Illuminati, they call that a Red Cross worker. And those Illuminati people are aware that there is a cosmic law, and it drives them crazy. It's called the rules, and the rules are you are not allowed to shoot the Red Cross workers. It's true. If you and I didn't believe this dude, we wouldn't be doing this. We got thrown into this thing, each in our own way. And the goal is the healing of this wounded planet, the healing of this earth. But once we understand holographic reality, once we understand that you can take the holographic plate, shine a laser into it, and get the image, and then chop the plate in half, and you don't get half of the image, you get the same image, just a little dimmer. And you can chop that holographic plate up into lots of little pieces, and each one will make the entire hologram. The reason why that works is because the universe itself is ultimately a singularity. There is a geometric seed that is the source of space and time. And that was now proven as of 2013 by two scientists from Caltech, Nima Arkani Hamed and Yaroslav Trunka. And yeah, I practiced that. Okay, let's be clear. It sounds so smooth. He's a silver-tongued soothsayer. These guys cracked the code of quantum mechanics and figured out that all of reality... I got a little red ladybug on my arm. You see that? I'm in harmony with nature here. That's not as cool as the lady that was playing her flute, though, and the butterfly landed on the flute. Did you see that one on YouTube? That was awesome. They found that the core of all quantum mechanics, the core of matter, energy, and consciousness is explained by a very simple geometric solid, and that the jiggles of the solid actually make the entire visible universe. And that's very different than this idea of the Big Bang, in which nothing exploded and became something. And I'm telling you, there is no other scientific model that accounts for the anomalies and that lines up with what Padmasambhava was telling us 1,200 years ago. If he landed in a capsule, an egg, then the chances are that he was from a society that was advanced enough that they knew this science. There was no lack of knowledge. So we go back to the ancient stuff and we find out that they are actually more true than where we think our enlightened science has taken us today. They had it right. And this also is very strange because it means that time does not exist. And if you really want to get clever, you can say that the flow of time is the result of our position in the universe. And as we move faster through the universe, we move faster through time. Einstein proved that with relativity. Nobody really gets that, because the ultimate bottom line is that time is strictly a function of us moving through apparent space. And what ultimately is pushing us through that apparent space is gravity, therefore gravity is time. And I could do 2 hours just on that. We're not going to do. We got to out-meditate that dog, okay? Come on, guys. Somebody's slipping. You're getting tired. He's petting the dog. Now it's all good back there. All right. Let's take a look at what the implications are of that scientific discovery, because what it says to us fundamentally is that Padmasambhava's realization about this primordial awareness is now a scientific fact. And then when we have the scientific data of people who practice this teaching, who actually make their awareness this way, then sure enough, they're ascending. They're getting what they needed to get out of this. Now, when I was on stage at Conscious Life Expo, we disclosed something which was quite upsetting to a lot of people, and that was the idea that ascension may be delayed by like 100 years. And there's this partial disclosure timeline that we were worried about having happen. So I want to be clear on that for a minute. Corey, and you can just acknowledge by nodding your head or whatever other gestures you feel are appropriate. I'm trying to be really good. You notice there hasn't been one dick joke. I did say fuck, but I didn't say any dick jokes. I'm getting there. What the hell was I just talking about? 100 partial disclosure, yeah. All right. This was pretty crazy because what we heard was, look, the beings told Corey to tell me to tell you. This is not Corey and me up on stage delivering information so that you get high on the cosmic bliss hit and then you go back to your house and nothing changes. This is actually a call to action, but the action is non-action. It's a call to emptiness. It's a call to awareness that is empty. It's a call to understand that you are being given a meal and you have the opportunity to actually eat it and digest it. And what the beings ultimately told us was that it is through disclosure that we get ascension. It is through people learning that we live in a world of funhouse mirrors and lies. That they start to recognize that all assumptions we have been handed on a silver platter can be questioned and in many cases disregarded. And this includes the fact that there is an occult world elite that profits off of your metaphysical ignorance because spiritual energy is absolutely necessary for their survival. And they need negative spiritual energy that is called loosh. They benefit from fear and pain. They benefit from you being focused on wanting money and power and celebrity. Social media, oh, look at all the people that just liked my post. People get pissed off at me because I don't do social media very much, but I'm starting to have to see now, like, okay, there's an opportunity here to do something that's positive, but I don't want to get addicted to, oh my gosh, I got 400 likes. You know, who cares? So let's take that idea and say, wait a minute, disclosure is the key to ascension. These guys are going to try, and they're still trying. I mean, there's been some very significant developments that I haven't had a chance to write about, which I'm going to do when I get home. There is a battle going on right now. Corey and I have been talking about it in other talks over Antarctica and the rest of the world, where Draco and other negative ETs are trying to flee the planet. They're being shot down. We had an assignment to pass along this intel, and I failed, and I got rebuked. So I'm not perfect, and it was pretty sobering. Agreements are very important to these people. If I say I'm going to do something, I better do it. But it's not just Corey and me, folks. We're being given information that can be used benevolently to help people evolve. And the key to avoiding this partial disclosure timeline, to actually carry that football over the touchdown line and make sure that we score that victory goal, it comes back to you. You are totally powerful. You have the ability to create something that the entire world could see, because you have almost free access to worldwide media. You can be a content creator and a publisher. You can do that. You can spread the word. And even if you don't believe everything that Corey says or everything that I say, and you're just here to warm the chair, you might still decide, well, if David might be right, then who am I? I am one of the wisdom keepers. I am one of the keepers of the keys of knowledge. I am one of the people who has the tools to liberate this planet and to create ascension, to create this state in which we are catapulted into a godlike new form. The information that is here, that information is alive, and that information can be released. That information can transform the planet. And you have the power to do that. So Ascension is about being kind. It's about loving yourself, loving other people, forgiveness, compassion, humility, patience. The universe is going to give you tons of lessons in patience. Sitting here and listening to me talk for an hour with no slides, that's an exercise in patience. But you've done very well. Take those lessons and apply them, and look specifically for the times in which your metaphysical consciousness gets destroyed by things where you have that patterned response, and make a different choice. Widen the gap. If you see that your house is about to burn down, don't just start screaming, but take a few moments. And you know what happened? 5 minutes later, I got another text, and the person who sent me the text did not inform me that the fire was significantly far away from the house and was already mostly contained. The photo I was sent made it look like it was about to engulf the whole house. But I didn't fire off my stress hormones. And when you have those stress reactions, let's be clear on this, there's all these chemicals that your body makes that take 3 days to be dissolved. And during those 3 days, you're not going to function very well. So this internal maintenance, keeping yourself emotionally clean, avoiding the high. Because when those chemicals first fire off that mess you up for 3 days and make you unable to produce anything or do anything or function or get anything creative done, that 3-day delay in your ability to be a functional person starts out with a morphine high, equivalent to being injected with 8 milligrams of morphine. You do get high, but it's the come down that takes 3 days. So you want to break that drug addiction and learn how to simply be present with your experience and not let it stick to you. Recognize that, yes, this might normally be something I would think of as terrible, but I don't need to look at it that way. I can just breathe and relax and go into a peaceful place. And I'd like to do that with you right now to close this out. So if you don't already have both feet flat on the floor, I'd like you to do that now. I'd like you to take a nice deep breath for a moment and just let it out. Then take another nice deep breath and let it out. Feeling yourself relaxing into the expansiveness of a beautiful sky. Your consciousness widening and widening and widening. Your awareness is that emptiness. Even the sounds in the background, this helicopter, you're up there. It's that helicopter's moving through your emptiness. You can feel how it moves through your body. Now the sound is past. And you hear some of the rustling from the winds. And you hear the hum of air conditioning units, buildings, cars on the highway. All those sounds do is make you more and more relaxed. You're going deeper and deeper now into a state of pure bliss. Seeing that awareness becoming ever more expansive. You're expanding to the sky and out into the cosmos, through the clouds, through into the stars. Seeing these pinpoints of light as if they're smiling at you. And you feel the radiant love, the overwhelming, indescribable peace that they are sending you. They recognize you. And they are you looking back at yourself. And you feel this energetic pulse, this transfiguration. You feel that there is a metamorphosis taking place within you right now. You may not fully understand it, but the inspiration, the peace, the clarity that you're experiencing right now. That is the goal. You have every opportunity to analyze the patterns of all the times that you were hurt, all the times that you were disrespected and betrayed, and cut the cords to those weights that hold you down and prevent you from becoming the sky, like a hot air balloon that must be sandbagged. But once you have boarded, you can cut those ropes. And at a certain point, maybe there's one rope that has resisted quite a bit, and you saw at it, and some of the threads break, and there is that time eventually where there's only one thread left, and you draw the blade one last time, and that one little thread pops. And there is a magnificent rush as you soar into the air. Suddenly buoyant, lifting, free of encumbrance, free of pain, judgment, fear, stress. And in that moment, you are pure, you are alive, you are divine, you are whole. And that cosmic magnificence becomes you. So just embody that consciousness now and recognize that there will be a time where that is all you need to be, and that is all you will experience. You will become a much more vibrant, information-dense being. Your thoughts will go at spectacular speeds. You have boundless compassion for yourself and others. And you also can protect yourself from interlopers who would try to remove your status and take you from this place. You're doing very, very well. And I have authorization on behalf of divine beings to tell you how proud we are of you for what you have done, for all the times that you have tried to be loving, all the times that you have forgiven those who hurt you in the most unimaginable ways possible. We are very proud of you for what you have done. We are very proud of you for how hard you have tried and the work that you have done to be yourself, to be the best you that you can be, to really become an embodiment of the great teachings of the ancient schools and spiritual faiths. You are a being of infinite worth. You are beautiful. You are radiant. You are love. You are a divine embodiment of the purified will of the cosmos and an instrument of its majesty and peace. And nothing and no one can ever take that away from you, because it is the only truth that is real. All else is illusion, and illusion cannot hold to you. It bounces off of your shield of light, and it falls carelessly to the ground to wither away and crumble into dust. It has no power. Any negativity that comes your way from people or beings is only something you created in the greater sense, and therefore it is only following your authorization and your will. And you can lovingly cut those cords and set aside your trauma and your addiction to pain once and for all. And so it is. Well, now I'd like you to come back into the room. It's not really a room. I guess I'm so used to doing this in hotels. Wiggle your fingers a little bit, wiggle your toes. you're ready, I'd like you to do something here. It's an audience participation exercise. Yep, we're going to do it. I'd like everybody to stand up and give your neighbor a handshake or a hug as you feel is appropriate to you. Share the love. Don't keep it all locked up inside. This is your moment. Oh, I got a panel. I got to go back for. I got dinner. I guess a lot of people thought hugging was appropriate. I got to go have dinner, so I'm going to be back here 7:15 for the panel. I hope to see you there, and I hope you're having a great time of contact in the desert. All right. See, I gave you literal contact in the desert now. All right.